Perfect. So, hey everyone, welcome back to another session of Scholeap's MS Abroad series. Every student who's ever thought about studying abroad has the same set of questions running through their head. Will I actually fit in? Can I keep up with a totally different way of learning? And will this degree actually lead somewhere? So, today's session is going to answer all of that straight from someone who's living it right now. So, just to introduce myself, my name is Shriyan Chakraborty and I'm a part of the Scholeap team. And for those who don't know us or are new here, Scholeap is an edtech platform built around students crack standardized tests like the GMAT, GRE, and the SAT, and guiding them through the maze of admissions and scholarships that come after that. So, this series exists because we think that the best way to understand studying abroad isn't done through downloading brochures or checking rankings on a random website. It's through the people who have actually done it. And today's guest is a great example of that. So please join me in welcoming Rohaan Sunil, who has just finished his master's in management at ESSEC Business School and in France through the Grande École track. And we're going to get into all of it today. We're going to discuss all of the things that Rohan has done through his journey in France in today's session, especially about how it was difficult for him to move to another country where he barely spoke the language, how the French education system is different to what he has been used to in India, and how he was able to also build a community from scratch in another country, and how that journey eventually led him to a marketing manager role at Sangoba, a reputed manufacturing and distribution company based out of France. So, whether you are actively planning a master's abroad or just curious about what the experience really looks like, I would love all of you, to kind of tune into the session and kind of make the most out of it. With that being said, welcome, Rohan. It's amazing to have you here.
So thank you very much, Shreyansh and the Scholeap team for having me. It's of course a great, I feel really good, talking about my journey because a few years back I was with Scholeap and, they
Correct.
know my journey right from towards the end of my
Hmm.
bachelor's and the entire application process and everything I went through to get into ESSEC. So really happy to be here to discuss it with you guys.
Correct. Perfect. And Ron, how have things been for you lately? How has France been treating you?
Yeah, it's been good. Maybe I'll give a bit of a background about myself. I did my bachelor's. First of all, my name is Rohan. I did my
Hmm.
bachelor's in chemical engineering back in India at NIT Surathkal. I finished it in 2023 and immediately moved to France to do my master's. It was a decision that I took because throughout the 4 years of engineering, I realized that while I, do have the passion for science, the technical
Hmm.
role is not something that I really wanted to delve deep into. There were a few experiences that I had that I'll share later, which kind of made me move towards marketing and strategy in particular. And I
Hmm.
realized that I wanted to do a master's in management. So that's when I began my applications with the help of Scholeap in towards the end of my third year.
Hmm.
And yeah, I joined ESSEC in 2023, been here for 3 years. I just finished the Master in Management program this June, and it's been a really, really long but fruitful journey. It's been a lot of learning for me, and it's been an amazing journey so far.
Amazing. And again, once again, congratulations for your graduation, because I think it's a great feeling to kind of stay there and have that feeling of, kind of going through all of your hard work and kind of getting that degree at the end of the day. And I think thank you for introducing yourself as well, because that sets up the context for today's conversation as well. And I think
Definitely.
your journey from being a chemical engineering student to a master's in management one is pretty interesting. And I think it'd be amazing to kind of unravel that in today's session, right? So I think, Rohan, I think
Definitely.
you've introduced yourself, you've set up the context. Now, at what point did you think about studying abroad? Right? Was there a particular instance or a moment that made you feel like, hey, this is the best moment to kind of go abroad and kind of get the degree that I want to kind of pursue later on?
So as I told you, throughout the maybe the 3 years, let's say, of my engineering, I realized that, while I have that passion for science,
Hmm.
science has been something that I've been studying for so long. I have that passion
Correct.
for that industry in general. It's the technical roles didn't really suit with me. And that initial thought came when I joined something called the 180 Degrees Consulting at NITK, where I did my bachelor's.
Hmm.
So 180DC is basically a global organization that works with NGOs and other such organizations. And they
Amazing.
basically partner up with colleges, and then you provide real life consulting services to these organizations. It can be non-profits,
Okay.
NGOs, startups, etc., but they basically don't make profit.
Hmm.
Um, or don't have the, intention of making profit. And why I joined it was just to explore another field, because I'd
Hmm.
been studying, just the
Correct.
chemical engineering degree. I hadn't taken
Hmm.
many minors or electives. And I just thought, why not explore another field? And while working on the kind of consulting projects, and these are real life consulting projects, so you have a
Correct.
lot of strategy and a lot of operational work as well when it
Correct.
comes to
Yeah.
marketing and handling the logistics within the company. Because strategy is up to a certain extent. These companies really want execution, they want output,
Correct.
right? So you actually have to implement stuff. And throughout that journey, I was there for, I think, 1.5, maybe 1.5 years.
Hmm.
So that journey, I just felt a kind of deep connection, first of all, because I was creating such an impact through my work.
Correct.
And
Yeah.
also with the kind of marketing and the strategy work I was doing, I felt that, this is something that I really gravitated towards. So
Hmm.
it was that, and
Hmm.
also taking a few electives in my final year, in my third
Hmm.
and final year, in marketing and finance,
Hmm.
etc. And with all, like, a basically a culmination of all of this made me realize that, the marketing and strategy is the field in which I want to work. Although the industry could be science based,
Hmm.
because I still wanted to use my chemical engineering background, but then I didn't want to work in a technical role. So it was
Correct.
this that made me realize that, I didn't want to maybe work for a few years as a chemical engineer and then take that call. I decided immediately that, this is the field I want to go into. And now, I could directly apply for jobs in India as well, but then I
Correct.
realized that I really need a deep level of understanding of these different subjects in order to
Correct.
understand which field exactly I wanted to enter. Because I
Hmm.
did a few projects in consulting, I did a few electives, but then I feel that's really not enough to understand what exactly the work would be like.
Correct.
While I
Yes.
had the passion for that, I needed to delve deep, do
Hmm.
internships, etc., before I realized that this is the career path I want to follow, because that is a big
Hmm.
decision you take. Your first job
Correct.
basically sets up your career path, is what I feel.
Yeah.
So I thought, why, do a job when I
Hmm.
can actually first delve deep into it? And yeah,
Correct.
that's what made me decide to do the MIM program at ESSEC, not at ESSEC,
Hmm.
but the MIM program in general, because,
Hmm.
uh, like, as I said, I just finished my engineering, so I had no
Hmm.
work experience, so the MBA was out of the question. And then
Hmm.
when I did a bit of research, which I can again delve deeper into later, but when I did a
Correct.
bit of research, I found out the MIM program was the right fit for me.
Perfect. And that sounds amazing because I think after also listening to you, it feels like you had it all planned out because it wasn't like a light bulb moment that you had, right? Like, hey, I just want to go abroad next year or the year after that. But you actually thought it through and kind of had a very clear plan of where you want to take it ahead as well. So Ron, once you had that kind of idea that, hey, I want to take this forward, I think all of us have that perception of how studying abroad looks like, right? Because we've been so influenced by social media, movies, and also through other people talking about their experience. So before you had applied, or I think before, or even while you were applying for, let's say, a master's abroad, what did studying abroad look like for you in your head? What was the perception that you had about studying abroad in general?
Honestly, the perception I had about studying abroad was mostly about the US. Like, I did not really
Okay,
know a lot about Europe in specific, because even in
correct.
the movies, like, we're watching some
Yeah,
anything related to the US. So
yeah,
for me, studying abroad felt like, uh, I don't want to say it's only that, but then it felt like more of a vacation. People go
yeah,
there to, travel around,
yeah,
enjoy life, party,
correct,
etc., while doing the studies, of course.
correct,
And I'm speaking specifically for a management master's, because an engineering master's is very different, where you're really delving deep and working on
correct.
projects and doing a lot of research. I feel that a management master's is a bit different from that.
Hmm.
So yeah, my perception mainly was, you're really in a diverse international setup, which you may not get to experience in India, for example, if you do a master's. So you're in a
Okay,
really diverse setup. It is much more interactive than what a bachelor's
hmm.
program is, because here you're not really forced to do a master's, or you're not forced to choose your courses, right? You choose what
Correct.
you want to do. So when
Yeah,
you're in that kind of environment, you're like completely surrounded with, like, extremely passionate people, like, who care a lot
correct.
about the subject you're talking about, the topics you're talking about. So it's going to be extremely competitive and interactive, and you get to learn a lot. So that was kind of my perspective on the
Perfect.
masters.
Yeah.
But then I was also kind of not thinking too much about it because I didn't want to go in with a lot of preemptive notions on how
Correct.
exactly it's going to play out, you know?
Correct. But okay, like, what was the stupidest preemptive notion that you had? Like the most random one that you felt that, hey, this if this works out, it will be a blast for me.
Honestly, like as I said, I didn't have too many, but then I
Hmm.
just thought, you go, the masters abroad is going to be really chill because,
Correct.
you're going to do a course that you want to do. So the
Correct.
professors really don't put in that much effort to kind of force you to participate in class, or
Hmm.
they're really chill about the subjects, and you just
Correct.
are able to breeze through everything with ease.
Hmm.
Because again, I come, like many people from India who study engineering, come from a very rigorous background where there's a
Correct.
lot of
Yeah.
effort and a lot of time that you put into your studies, etc. So I just felt that the entire process abroad is
Hmm.
going to be like much easier and much
Hmm.
more chill, where you can just breeze through everything. But that was
Ah,
not really what exactly I was expecting. It was maybe a thought that
correct.
it could happen, yeah.
Makes sense. I think that's a great way to put it, because I think out of all the answers that I've heard, this is kind of quite a real one, because again, you are so inspired with so many things. So I think thank you for answering that. Now, I think moving on to your ESSEC journey to an extent. So, out of all the programs and schools that you were looking at while you were deciding for your master's abroad for your MIM program, how did ESSEC end up in the mix? And what was the first thing about ESSEC that pulled you in towards the university?
I mean, honestly, like for me, let me talk about Europe in particular because a lot of
Mm,
people ask me this question. So, when you look at the master's programs, if you look at
mm,
masters in management in particular, there are
mm,
not a lot of colleges in, let's say, Canada and US that offer this kind of
correct.
program where a
Mm,
person without any work experience can come and do a master in management. It's
correct. Yeah.
generally more like MSc focused subjects, like let's say MSc in, I don't know, data analytics, or maybe something more, or MSc in marketing.
Mm,
So they have a lot of like focus subjects for masters in the US and Canada,
mm,
whereas I couldn't find really an MIM equivalent anywhere else
understood.
outside of Europe,
Mm,
basically. Like, and I was pretty sure that I wanted to do a generic course because, as I said, I just done my
correct.
engineering. I needed to explore everything before I take a call on which field I wanted to enter, and
Correct.
that's why I was pretty sure that I wanted to do the a generic course called the Master in Management without any specialization.
Mm,
So what it was like shortlisting, I think, Payaswini
mm,
and Kalyan were there helping me
yeah.
throughout the journey. I think they remember as well. It was really not an easy call because there are a lot
Mm,
of good colleges in the Europe that you can
correct.
select. And,
Yeah.
ranking is one thing. Of course, if you just shortlist by ranking, there are
Yeah.
like three or four, maybe you shortlist and
Mm,
select them. And of course, it was a factor when I was, selecting the college. But
mm,
it also is a lot more than that. It's what are
yeah.
the different courses they offer? What are the internship opportunities they offer? Do they allow you to do a gap year in the middle where you can do an internship? Do they allow
Correct.
you to do apprenticeships? What is their network like? The
Mm,
alumni network? What are the career opportunities after? So
mm,
there were a lot of things that you had to consider when you're shortlisting a college, and
correct.
there were a lot of options. But then what dragged me towards ESSEC the most was the kind of flexibility in the program,
Mm,
because I felt that that was the most important factor for me,
correct. Yeah.
because coming into the college, I didn't want to be restricted to choosing like the university deciding that these are
Mm,
the courses you're supposed to do, you
yeah.
know. Of course, there will
Correct.
be few core courses that you have to do, but then
Mm,
beyond that, first of all, I needed time. A lot
mm,
of colleges, for example, like in the like you say LBS or any other
mm,
college like NCR, HEC, maybe not HEC, but NCR, for example, they have much shorter courses, like a year and a half courses.
understood.
And
Mm,
for me personally, I needed more time than that because I definitely
mm,
wanted to do an internship in between.
correct.
I needed a couple of years at least to decide what kind of career path I wanted to follow. So that was one factor because the ESSEC
Correct.
MIM course
Yeah.
is 2 years long. And yeah, the second is the opportunity to select my own courses and maybe after the initial few months, just decide, okay, this is the kind of track I want to follow in
Mm.
terms of my courses. In the middle of the courses, I just want to stop here and then do an internship in between for 6 months. I'm allowed to do that as
Mm.
at ESSEC. And maybe after that, I can do a specialization for a year or a 6 month specialization if I want to. So ESSEC really gives you that flexibility where you don't really have to go
Correct.
all 5 days to ESSEC. I'll basically break this down later on how ESSEC works, but then you don't
Correct.
have to go all 5 days. You don't have to go every trimester to
Mm.
ESSEC. And basically that flexibility was a big deciding factor.
Amazing. I think, yeah, I think that's an interesting way that you've put it across, because I think it's a combination of both, as you said. It's a combination of where you're also going and the kind of program, the flexibility that also attaches itself in the entire process as well. So that's amazing. And I think coming on to the program, because I think what I've heard and what I've heard about the MIM program at ESSEC is a bit unique, because I came across a particular term which is Grande École. I think if I'm, am I pronouncing
Grande
it
École,
correctly?
yes. It's
Grande
Grande École,
École
yes.
or Grande École. Perfect.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of people come across Grande École while they're researching about France, right? Or universities in France particularly. So once you, let's just say, came across ESSEC for the first time, how did you understand that Grande École was the best option for you? And if possible, Rohan, can you also explain what a Grande École is for people who might not be knowing this here?
Yeah, definitely. So the Grande École program is basically offered by some of the top colleges in France.
Mhm.
And it's basically like, how do I put this? It doesn't really relate to me much because I'm an international student.
Okay,
It is more for the French students. So it's something
understood.
similar to what we do in India, where after
Mm.
high school, the French students have 2 years of something called the preparatory or the prepa, where
Okay.
they prepare
Mm.
for the Grande École program.
Okay.
And for them, these 2 years are extremely rigorous, and then they write a final exam, and based on their rank, they can choose the school
Understood.
they want to go to. So for them, the Grande École program is like getting into a Grande École program is really extremely difficult because it's based on
Correct.
the competitive exam.
Correct.
But for me as an international student, the Grande École didn't really catch my eye particularly because, I still did a bachelor's and then like
Correct.
that's another way. You can either write
Correct.
the prepa exam as a French student and get in, or you do a
Mm.
bachelor's and you do a master's. And since I did a bachelor's and I'm doing a master's, that's not what particularly caught my eye. But then
Mm.
it is again a really competitive program
Correct.
to enter for, and
Correct.
it's offered only by the top colleges in Europe to
Correct.
give a definition of what it is.
Mm.
And yeah, I mean, for me, that was not really the catching point. It was
Mm.
basically the Master in Management program. It's called the Grande École Master in
Correct.
Management. And it was basically this, the kind of length of the program, which was 2 years,
Mm.
which was ideal for me. The kind
Mm.
of flexibility it gave, and also, ESSEC is renowned for its
Yeah.
the kind of professors they have, the kind of courses they have, and that's why they're ranked in one of the top colleges for the MIM program. So this is what particularly drew me, not exactly the Grande École.
Understood. And then I think that makes absolute sense as well, because I was also reading a little bit about the program as well, and I kind of came across how competitive and how hyper selective it was throughout its admission process as well. And I think that speaks volumes about how much you've achieved in that process as well, getting into a program of that sort. Perfect. So now we've talked about your understanding of what a study abroad looks like, why you chose to study abroad in the
Yep.
first place. But I think now the question kind of revolves around what happens or what happened to you when you land in that particular country for the first time. So Rohan, again, I'll take you back to that day when you landed in France for the first time.
Yeah.
So yeah, you've landed in France. Was the first thing that catches you off guard, or something that you see and go like, hey, this is not something that you usually see in India, but in a good way?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I remember it like it was yesterday, like I had a few friends who were coming with
Mm.
me who I met in India as well, and we were all coming together in the same flight. I mean, as I said, like I didn't really have a lot of expectations when I was coming here. I'd never been to Europe before, so I
Mm.
didn't really know what to expect. I mean, there are a
Correct.
lot of things I'd read and heard about, but then, I didn't want to put any, again,
Correct.
preemptive notions in my head.
Yeah.
But I think the thing that surprised me most when I first landed here was like I landed here at in the evening around maybe 8 p.m. And
Mm.
then as I was reaching my residence, I just was looking around and it was completely dark at around 9,
Yeah.
8:30, 9 p.m. And I was
Yeah.
really wondering like what is going on over here, like why is it so dark? Why is every
Mm.
shop closed? What is going on? It's
Yeah.
only 9 p.m. And then it's something that I've gotten used to now because basically everything shuts down by 8,
Correct.
8:30 p.m. here, and maybe
Correct.
few restaurants are open till late night in Paris, but then
Mm.
once it hits 9 o'clock, it's basically dark all around you. So
Correct.
that was a bit of a culture shock because like I'm from Bangalore in India, and then if I want to go out at like 11, 11:30 at night, there's
Correct.
definitely a lot of places
Correct.
still open and it's still bright outside. And there's so much traffic on the road always at
Mm.
any point of the day. So that was kind of a shock for me.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was interesting to see, the kind of lifestyle they lead over here is very different from what we have in
Correct.
India.
Correct. And I do understand. I think I've also been in Bangalore for 4 years, and I think the difference from Bangalore to another country would look massive, right? I think, especially in a country like France. And then that kind of sounds interesting as well. So, perfect. Now you've understood, you have had that experience. And now I believe, Rohan, you've also stayed there for 3 years, right? You've been in France for 3 years. So, now
Yeah.
from your initial idea of what France looked like for you, or study abroad looked like for you, do you think that it has lived up to what you had expected, or did you expect it to be a bit different than what you've experienced?
I mean, honestly, it's not as straightforward as what I expected because there are a lot of complexities involved. But
Yeah.
overall, I'd say it's been kind of a unique experience for me because as I mentioned before, like I did expect to interact with a diverse international set of people in
Correct.
every course. And I got to do that at ESSEC. Almost every, so the thing at ESSEC is that you don't have the same cohort or the same batch for every class you take because you get to select your course. You're not with the same batch every time if you get to
Mm.
select the course you want to do. So every time you're with a different set of people, different nationalities, and at every course at ESSEC, you know, they want you to work together in groups for
Yeah.
projects, for cases,
Yeah.
assignments, etc. So you always get to interact and talk to a lot of different people with different views and different experiences, different backgrounds.
Correct.
So that is something that I really wanted to have because
Mm.
it's something you may not exactly get in
Mm.
India. And
Correct.
it's something that I would say is unique because you then learn much more than just
Correct.
like reading off a book or just speaking to the same
Mm.
type of person. When you interact with different people, you kind of understand more about what is happening in the
Yeah.
world, what and how do you when it comes to solving cases, you get to
Mm.
approach the problem from different ways, etc. So that was a really big plus point, and that was something that I really wanted as well. I didn't expect it, but then it was something that I wanted to have. And yeah, I mean, in terms of the courses, etc., the professors are, I thought it'd be very just chill, professors just
Yeah.
come do their stuff and go, but it's not like that. All of the professors, at least with the courses I took, they're extremely passionate about the topic they're teaching, like
Mm.
they've been in
Correct.
that particular field, in that space for a
Mm.
very long time. And they're always up to date on what is happening with all the evolutions happening in that field. And
Mm.
they're always, there to kind of make sure that you're staying up to date with what is happening, and
Mm.
they're not teaching the same old boring content. They're
Correct.
upgrading themselves every day. They're trying to make the classes as interactive as
Mm.
possible. They're putting in all their passion towards the course, and you realize that when you take
Mm.
at least some of the courses that you take, you realize that it's not just them coming and spitting out whatever they want. You can realize that they're
Correct.
extremely passionate about it, and they want you to feel as passionate as well.
Correct.
And because of that, you feel that what, even I want to put in some effort for to match the amount of effort the professor is putting, or to match the amount of effort you see your classmates around you putting. You really
Mm.
want to get in and delve deep into
Yeah.
things like that. So this was not something that I expected, but then I was pleasantly surprised when I saw it.
Amazing. And I think sometimes it's good to have such different, like when it challenges you and you kind of have a different experience altogether, because I think it makes it more sweeter to kind of have those
Definitely.
experiences when you didn't expect it to kind of happen in the first place. So I think that sounds amazing. Now, Rohan, from talking about this to now kind of going into the core stuff of IBA here, to kind of discuss more about your academic journey and your MIM experience as a whole. So, Rohan, for someone who's considering the MIM program at ESSEC, what does ESSEC actually kind of look like? for this program on a day-to-day basis. And can you walk us through how it's structured and planned across the time that you spend in the program?
Definitely. So I'll go like give you a broad view of how the MIM program is. So you
Mm.
basically it is a you can either do it in 1 year, 2 years, or 3 years. You have a specific number of credits that you have to finish, and it's up to you to take your
Okay,
time and finish the credits.
understood.
Not even three, actually, you can do it up to 4 years as well.
Okay,
Um, every year is broken down into 3 trimesters. So you have
okay.
T1,
Mm.
T2, T3 every year. And what happens is that at the start of, like before the start of every trimester, you are allotted a certain number of points. Let's
Mm.
say, I don't know, 100 or 150 points. And you bid on the courses that you want to take.
Okay,
Because the issue is that a lot of people may want to take a particular course, and then you have a certain number of seats
correct.
for a
Yeah,
certain number of courses. You can't let everyone take the course. So
correct.
if you really want a course, you bid more points and then you get it over someone else. And if you may not want it as much, you may not get it because you put lesser points. So it is a bit
Interesting.
of a gamble when it comes to getting the
Yeah.
course you want.
Mm.
And I mean, the first time I did it in my first trimester, it
Mm.
was, a bit of a headache because you really
Mm.
don't know how many
Correct.
points you
Yeah,
put. You don't have a benchmark, you don't have anything.
correct.
But then there are a few websites created by students where you can go
Mm.
and check the history of the points bid for every course. But then that varies from year to year because there's no relevance, I feel,
Correct.
between the two. But yeah, I mean, even towards the end, it's the same. You don't really know if you're going to get a course or not because you don't
Mm.
know. Like, nobody's going to tell you that
Yeah,
how many points they put for a particular course.
yeah.
Yeah, so you're allotted points
Mm.
and you have 9 core courses, which
Mm.
are basically the basics of marketing, finance, strategy, operations,
Mm.
economics, etc. So you have 9 different core courses which are mandatory to complete.
Mm.
And you also have other online courses called SPOCs, which you can just do it anytime throughout the year. They're on different
Mm.
topics like diversity and inclusion, climate change, leadership, etc.
Mm.
So those you don't have to bid for, and those are fairly chill. You can do it anytime during 3 years. The core courses you bid for it, and you're supposed to finish the 9 core in if you want to graduate. So you cannot graduate
Understood.
before finishing the 9 core. And
Mm.
if you want to delve deep into something, for example, you want to take more electives on marketing, they ideally want you to finish the core of marketing first, which is basically the basics of marketing
Understood.
before you delve deep. So
Correct.
the core courses are a prerequisite for a lot of the electives that you want to take. So
Mm.
ideally, you want to finish at least the core courses for which the electives you want to delve deep into. You want to finish them
Correct.
early. Yeah,
Correct.
so that is how the course structure
Mm.
is. I don't think I'm missing out on anything.
Mm.
And every term, every trimester, you can take as many number of courses as you want.
Mm.
Um, just making sure that the classes don't clash with each other. So every course has a particular timing. So you can take any
Okay.
course as long as they don't clash with each other. And
Understood.
you can go to ESSEC once a week, you can go to ESSEC five
Mm.
times a week, you
Mm.
can not go to ESSEC if you want for that trimester. That's totally up to you,
Okay.
as long as you finish the
Yeah.
total number of credits in the given time in which you want to graduate.
Mm. Interesting. I think what you just mentioned is something that I've never experienced, especially the auction part where you start bidding for your courses. It's pretty interesting. I think it's very unique because I have never come across that system ever in my life. And I think my next question is also about the kind of flexibility that ESSEC MIM gives you at the end of the day, right? And I think you've answered that very well. But in that entire experience of the choosing courses and figuring out what's best for you, did you feel that it was a bit overwhelming for you, or did you feel that hey, it's the best way to kind of make my decisions and kind of go ahead with what I really want to do? Did you feel empowered, or did you feel empowered by the kind of process that was
Yeah.
there at ESSEC?
See, honestly, it really depends. Like, I didn't come in with a clear mind as to, this
Mm.
is the track I want to take. I'm going to enter
Yeah,
marketing and do these courses. I didn't come in
yeah.
with that clear mind because I had no experience in anything before this.
Mm.
Like, I did consulting projects, as
Correct.
I said, with 180DC, but then again, that is very generic. You can take strategy, you can take marketing, you can take operations, you can
Yeah.
do many things with that. So when I came in initially, the first trimester especially was extremely overwhelming because you have so many options to choose from and you don't really know what courses to take. You want to take them
Mm.
all, but then you can't
Yeah.
take them all. And what for me personally, it was a bit different because
Mm.
maybe I'm diverging a bit over here, but then my goal was to start an apprenticeship in my second year. I knew that that is
Correct.
definitely something I wanted to do. And
Correct.
with my background, with no work experience, I knew that that was a
Mm.
hindrance. I needed something to talk about in the
Yeah.
interview of my
Yeah.
apprenticeships.
Yeah.
So my goal when I entered ESSEC was to start an internship as soon as possible.
Mm.
It was not to focus on what kind of courses to take, but then to get an internship, either
Correct.
starting in the second trimester or starting in the third trimester, because you can't do it in the first trimester.
Yeah.
So what I did personally was, just take a few core courses in my first trimester so that I can get the basics done and then later
Okay.
decide which one I want to go deep into
Mm.
instead of directly doing marketing and then few marketing subjects in
Mm.
particular. And my goal was again by the second trimester to start an internship. So during my first trimester, I just took a few core courses and then began applying for internships. And I started an internship in my second trimester. So
Mm.
basically, the second and third trimester of the year, from Jan to July, I
Mm.
was not at ESSEC at all. So I didn't even go to ESSEC for the 6 months. So I didn't do any
Okay.
courses during that
Okay.
time. So my entire
Mm.
first year was just my first trimester in which I
Correct.
took 2 or 3 courses.
Mm.
That's another point that I missed for the previous one
Mm.
was ESSEC allows you to do something called an intensive week. So an
Okay.
intensive week is where you can do an entire course in 1 week.
Mm.
So you attend school for all 5 days and you have 2 classes every day.
Mm.
And it's basically a compressed version of the course. And basically in a week, you're done with that course. So that is something
Interesting.
like
Yeah.
if you want to do maybe 3 courses in a trimester, you can do one during the intensive week and then two regularly during the whole 3 months. So you don't have to do all three during
Correct.
the entire term. So that was an advantage as well, which I give.
Amazing. I think amazing. I think these are amazing concepts that are coming across that I'm also kind of coming across. And I think,
Yeah.
and that's a great way. I think what you have mentioned in the last 5 minutes is now a great way to kind of come across and build a little bit of parallels with the Indian education system, right? Because
Hmm.
you've been here in India, I think for 15, 16 years, gone through the education system, and you have some clarity about the way that it's taught here in the country. But what about the teaching style at ESSEC? How different was it than like a typical Indian classroom? And what caught you off guard, or what caught you off guard in a good way?
Honestly, it is really different because, again, like taking my own example from my
Mm.
bachelor's, other than the minors and the electives, you don't
Mm.
really choose what course you want to do. You're already allotted that this
Correct,
term you have to do these particular courses.
correct.
And it may or may not be something that you're directly interested in learning.
Yeah,
And because of that, the kind of environment and the kind of participation you have during the classes are much different. Whereas here,
correct,
nobody's forcing you to do a master's. Nobody's
correct.
forcing you to take that particular course at ESSEC. You can take
Yeah,
any course you want.
yeah.
So if you're choosing that particular course, if it's especially a niche course,
Mm.
you really are surrounded by people who are extremely passionate.
Mm.
You're with a professor who's extremely passionate about the topic.
Correct.
And it's not a forced interaction at all. It's never
Mm.
a forced interaction, maybe except for a few core courses. Like, for example,
Correct.
if you're doing a finance course, if you're not really into finance, maybe there
Mm.
could be a few forced interactions.
Correct.
But in any other elective that you're choosing, it's never there because
Mm.
you're taking the course out of your own interest.
Mm.
Um, yeah, so again, the kind of participation that goes in is really genuine, and then you learn a lot because again, coming from a background with no experience, a lot
Yeah,
of the courses which I took, I didn't have, a lot of prior knowledge or let's say work experience to look back to relate.
yeah.
So when I hear people talk about their work and how it relates to the course or the particular topic they're teaching, or and I hear people talk about their personal experiences and give a lot of examples
Mm.
based on what's happening in the real world, it really hits you in a different way because you don't
Yeah,
get to hear this if you're just sitting in a class without any
correct,
interaction. And this also
correct.
tells you a lot about the different cultures, the different
Mm.
companies around the world, how they act. Uh, and it also
Hmm.
gives you like real life information of how what is happening right now in the world. And this is
Correct.
where something that, of course, it is there in Indian colleges
Hmm.
as well. I'm not saying that it's not there, but
Yeah.
then me particularly for my bachelor's, this was not something that was there, and you kind of see
Yeah.
the amount of participation, the amount of genuine interaction that's going on, and you feel
Correct.
extremely motivated to go
Correct.
back and read more and learn more and become an expert yourself.
Correct. I think yes. I think abroad there are more discussion, like more discussion based kind of narratives and kind of in the way that teaching is done. I think I've heard that quite a lot of time, and I think that's a great way to kind of put points across and have a great way of discussing things and come to a solution. Now, I think we've discussed about the teaching style and how it's different. But Rohan, was there like a particular course or module that struck out for you, that made you feel like, hey, I am in love with this particular course or module, and I want to kind of take this forward in whatever I'm doing next?
Honestly, there are many courses that did that because, again,
Mm.
I particularly chose the courses that I
Correct.
wanted to do. If I have to be in general, the strategy courses that I took were really amazing because, when it comes to strategy courses, you're basically reading a lot of cases and trying to
Correct.
understand why the company did what they did. And when it comes to a broader perspective, you have to really think about so many different aspects of what could happen.
Correct. Yeah.
You're not,
Yeah.
because coming from an engineering background specifically, my mindset is always to land on one answer. This is the right
Yeah.
answer.
Yeah.
And it's never the case when it comes to strategy.
Correct.
You have to be, like,
Correct.
as they say, as messy as possible. You think of so many different things, so many different solutions. And
Mm.
for that, you need a kind of different perspective. You
Mm.
can't just
Yeah.
force your way to just stick on one particular lever and then
Yeah.
just delve deep into that. You have to start thinking of multiple things.
Mm.
And as you go through the different cases in the strategy courses, that's what you realize,
Mm.
there's not one particular answer. There are multiple solutions, and you also have to delve deep into each solution and think of how it affected the company. Why did the company that
Yeah.
take that particular stance? So when I took the strategy courses, I took one on corporate strategy, for example,
Mm.
and then when you're talking about corporate strategy, you're talking about vertical integration, you're talking about mergers and acquisitions, and this is a very broad level topic. It's not
Correct.
there's no specific answer as to why the
Correct.
company did this
Mm.
particular merger or an acquisition. So
Mm.
these kind of courses really make you think on a much deeper and different level than how you would normally think, and that helps in the work you do as well. Like,
Yeah.
for example, whenever I try to do whenever I take up any project at work, I don't think that, okay, this is the solution to it, we're going to do it like this and break it down. I try to explore all the possibilities,
Mm.
go through all of the different kind of routes we can take, and then
Mm.
find out which is maybe a couple or maybe two or three which you could go down further into, but then try
Correct.
to be as broad as possible. And that's
Correct.
what the strategy courses taught me.
Mm.
If I had to choose one course in particular, it's actually one that I took recently. So I did my internship in Stellantis, which is a car
Mm.
company. They have 14 different brands under their portfolio. You might have heard of some of
Okay.
them like
Mm.
Citroën, Peugeot, etc.
Mm.
So a course that I took recently was on auto and mobility strategy, which was
Okay.
taught by this
Mm.
amazing professor, Jan Lepoter.
Mm.
And he's extremely passionate about the industry and this particular
Mm.
topic. And he's so well researched that
Mm.
when you kind of listen to him, you hear so many things that you never even heard of things that
Yeah.
are happening in the industry, things that could happen, challenges that
Yeah.
could happen. And anytime he poses a question, you
Mm.
think that this could be a solution. For example, you're talking about autonomous vehicles, you're talking about
Yeah.
EVs. He poses a question on what could be a challenge. You think that, okay, this is a solution. But then
Mm.
he'll come up with another challenge to that solution. So, which will make you think, okay, this cannot be the only solution. You have to think
Yeah.
what could be the consequence of this solution that you've given
Yeah.
on another macro problem that could happen somewhere else in the world.
Correct. Correct.
And it always goes deeper and deeper. There's no
Mm.
one proper solution to it. And
Yeah.
this is a course that I actually took very recently in the trimester before, and it was
Interesting.
an
Yeah.
amazing one. And if I'd taken it earlier, I'd have probably taken a few more courses with this professor because I really love
Yeah.
the way he thinks, the way he expresses what he wants to say.
Yeah.
But this was a genuinely interesting one for me because I am passionate about the automotive industry and the changes that are happening.
Mm.
And to give another thing about the course is that for almost every lecture, he brought in a guest speaker from the industry to speak about what is happening and the challenges they face or a project they took up.
Amazing. Yeah.
For example, they brought in someone from Stellantis to talk about a project which he took up, which completely disrupted the way in which they do projects. So Stellantis generally manufactures a certain type of vehicle, but then this time they
Mm.
something called a quadricycle, which is not exactly a vehicle. So you don't need a license to drive it. So then
Mm.
you're basically blowing up the entire target audience. You're reaching now to
Mm.
people who have
Yeah.
licenses as well. And then you're also disrupting the entire process you have because if you look at France, the the end-to-end process takes years,
Mm.
well, years,
Correct.
from the ideation till the launch of the car takes years,
Mm.
whereas the project took, I think, 18 months, which is competing with
Okay.
the rates at which Chinese companies manufacture cars.
Mm.
So this was basically an entire disruption to the system. It was interesting to hear someone who
Mm.
actually worked on that project come and talk about
Correct.
what
Yeah.
and what she did. What she did, sorry. So it was again a great experience to listen to her. So again, that
Amazing. Yeah.
bring in guest speakers that talk about real world things that are happening, and you get to
Mm.
learn a lot from people all around the world, industry
Correct.
experts, etc.
Correct. And that sounds amazing because again, you've talked so passionately about again the teacher, the professor, and what they bring along. Because I think what you spoke makes absolute sense, right? Because that's how students are meant to have the kind of knowledge and the experience to go about things as well, right? Not only about the course that they take up, but eventually through the people who've been in the field as well, right? That's gives more practical nuance to what a person does. But I think I'll
Exactly.
come back to and I'll ask you a simple question because you've spoken about this professor for with so much enthusiasm and passion. But again, I'll still pose you this question. So, if you had to pick just one professor at ESSEC who completely changed how you view business, who would they be, and what exactly makes their classroom experience so unforgettable?
I mean, it would honestly all of the professors under which maybe I'll talk about a chair in which I was in because I haven't spoken about
Hmm.
it. But if I had to pick one, it would definitely be this professor because
Yeah, makes sense.
I
Yeah,
really love people who are passionate about the
yeah,
kind of topics they work on. And of course, all the professors are passionate, but then I could really feel
mhm,
the energy when I was in the room with this professor and the
correct,
kind of guest speakers he brought on. He made us do a project in the end. And, he's not looking for straightforward answers. Even in the project, he didn't want a straightforward yes or no. He said,
correct.
you could bring me any solution as long as you justify it. And if the justification makes sense, I'm willing to consider it. And,
Um,
to hear things like that, it makes you feel that, you know what, he doesn't want a yes or a no, he doesn't want a straightforward answer. You have to really think deep, consider all the possibilities.
yeah,
And honestly, it was an
yeah,
extremely interesting course. It was very rigorous as well because it was not as straightforward
mm,
as you think it'd be. And again, if I could, I would have taken a couple more courses with this professor, definitely, if I didn't
mm,
find out so late. Maybe I can talk about the chair I was in as well. So at ESSEC,
mm.
there is the opportunity to specialize in certain, let's say, fields. Like you want
Okay.
to specialize in entrepreneurship, you want to specialize in fashion or beauty,
Mm,
etc. You can do something called a chair or a track. A track is where you
okay.
just take courses for that particular.
Mm,
Suppose a marketing track would just be courses on marketing. So if you
mm.
finish all the marketing courses in that track, you've validated that track. A chair
Understood.
is something similar, but then it is for a fixed period. Um,
Okay.
it's generally for 3 or 6 months.
Mm,
And what I did was the chair on circular economy during my
mm.
second year. So what the chair is basically, I think, 5 courses that you do over the 6 months,
Okay.
and it basically specializes in that particular field. So my courses were specializing on circular economy, sustainability and circular economy.
Correct.
And in throughout the 6 months, you also get to work with a company on a real life project that they're working on. So with an actual company.
Understood.
So I personally chose this circular economy chair because right since I joined ESSEC, coming from an chemical engineering background, I know the importance of sustainability in today's world.
Correct.
I
Yeah.
know that it is a topic that is going to be integrated into any field. You
Correct.
know, you go into any industry, it's an important
Yeah.
topic, and there are a lot of advances. There are a lot of things that are going on in the field right now, especially when it comes to circular economy, because we've always thought about sustainability as, recycle. You have to
Yeah.
recycle things, etc.
Yeah.
But when you think of circular economy, recycle should actually not be the first priority, because in recycle, you're you're breaking down the components, but then you're still using energy to rebuild another component, and you're still
Correct. Yeah.
taking up resources
Yeah.
again. It should be reuse, repair, refurbish, etc. That should be the kind of levers you're focusing on.
Mm.
And that's where you kind of transition from a linear economy to a circular economy. And I knew that this was something that was going to be important in the future,
Mm.
regardless of the industry. And it's
Correct.
something
Yeah.
that I wanted to explore because it was not something that I didn't have a lot of knowledge on what exactly companies are doing. So
Makes
this
sense. Yeah.
chair was extremely interesting because, again, when it comes to a chair, you have professors who do tons of research, who are extremely up to date on the
Mm.
topic. And there was a course, for example, taught by Justine Laurent on from linear to circular, which
Okay.
basically gives you a basic idea of why the companies are transitioning from this, what are the regulations that are going on, and how
Correct.
exactly you should consider the different pillars of
Mm.
circular economy and what should you focus on. And also, the project that I did was with one of the largest construction companies in France called Bouygues Construction. And we
Okay.
worked on a project where they wanted to implement low-tech solutions. So in this world, we're always thinking of high-tech solutions, right?
Correct.
What is the next advancement we can make
Correct.
in order to make things much easier? They're going back in time thinking of low-tech because it involves solutions where you don't have to use as much resources. Of course, in high-tech
Correct.
solutions,
Yeah.
more resources.
Yeah.
Now, when you go to low tech, it basically means you're not using technology, but then designing buildings in such a way that the
Mm.
architecture itself allows for cooling, allows for sunlight, etc. So
Yeah.
it does not involve technology, but then you're cutting down on resources that are being used. So,
Yeah.
you know,
Correct.
entering this field was a very unique experience for me because I wouldn't have gotten to do it especially with a company actually working on field with such solutions
Correct.
unless I took the chair. So that was also something that I would definitely recommend doing a chair, not only on circular economy, but any topic that interests you because you get to work with companies. And that is a huge advantage,
Correct.
because I always, personally, courses are one thing, but then doing real life projects, working with companies, doing internships, they give you a completely different view of how things work in the corporate. And any
Correct.
opportunity to do that is something I always recommend.
Makes sense. And perfect. I think because I was looking forward to kind of also understanding about how ESSEC also kind of blends in the academic in with the corporate and the practical stuff, right? Because I think it's equally important to also kind of connect how you're what you're learning to what you're going to do in a couple of
Yeah.
years once you graduate. So I think what you mentioned is a great blend of how ESSEC has been able to balance the academic and the practical side together. So again, coming to my next question, Rohan, because I think you said from the beginning that you're very excited about working with people from different backgrounds, people from different countries, and I believe you also spoke about a couple of projects that you did. So did you have an opportunity to work on a project where you're working with a diverse team with people coming from different backgrounds, or different countries? And maybe you can talk about that, about how diverse was the background and what project you worked on, and did it affect your experience as a whole?
Honestly, in almost every course, you are working on projects towards the end. At least when it comes to marketing and strategy, they're not really final exams that happen. They really want you to work on projects and presentations and implement all of the things that were taught during the entire 9 sessions that happened.
Hmm.
So yeah, I worked on different projects with different
Hmm.
sets of people. For example, the auto
Yeah.
mobility one that I said, towards the end, we had to do a project on the future of autonomous vehicles, which you always think that um, companies have to build autonomous vehicles and they
Yeah.
have to go from level 3, level 4, and then what are they doing in terms of innovation? But
Hmm.
then suddenly, our topic was basically suddenly Uber drops a bomb that they are entering the autonomous
Okay.
vehicles industry, and then
Yeah.
they are not manufacturing their own cars, right? But then
Okay.
they are basically partnering with autonomous vehicle companies and they are
Correct.
controlling the entire ecosystem because anybody who wants to book the autonomous
mm,
vehicle will have to go to the Uber platform. The revenue, the
correct.
maximum revenue goes to Uber, and they are
Mm,
in charge of basically everything. So in terms of margins, they get the highest, but then in terms of value creation, they don't have to create the autonomous car. They just build
correct,
the platform on it.
correct.
So what kind of impact does this have on, let's say, an OEM manufacturer, sorry, a car company? Like an OEM is basically an original
Mm,
equipment manufacturer, so the car company manufacturer.
okay.
What impact does this have on them now? For example, you come to Stellantis and say that Uber is entering the autonomous vehicles
Mm,
market. What happens to you? You become a supplier to Uber, and then your margins are
mm,
really low. Or do you
okay.
want to compete with Uber and build your own platform where people can book your own autonomous vehicles? But then how long will that take? And then once you build the platform, will you be able to scale it to the level Uber has? That's another
Mm,
question you have to ask. So this was really interesting
yeah, yeah.
project where you had to, again, I worked with, I think there was a French person, and a Chinese person,
Mm,
and basically different nationalities in my group. And they have their own perspectives on what is happening in their country. So
mm,
the autonomous vehicles market is extremely different in, let's say, Europe versus India versus China. And
mm,
when they bring their own perspectives into the case, into the discussions, it becomes really interesting because you have an idea of what's
yeah,
happening in the market, but then they have like on-ground knowledge of, this is
correct,
the company that's doing that.
correct.
So it is always interesting to hear diverse perspectives from different people. And again, I
Yeah.
keep saying this, like it is one of the major benefits of joining an international school with people
Yeah.
from, you have people with 3-4 years of work experience, you have people with no work experience like me in the same team. And then
Mm,
we all bring our own different backgrounds. Like I bring my chemical engineering background, he brings another background,
correct,
someone else brings a finance background, and
correct,
then you get to learn a lot. Another
correct.
example of a project which I could say is in a product management course, where the final project was we actually had to work with a food company
Mm,
because their target customer segment was diminishing. So we had
mm,
to identify a better way for them to position themselves, to target new
okay.
customers, to enhance their product portfolio, to target these new customers, and
Mm,
kind of boost their marketing activity. So it was a really creative kind of project
mm,
where you had to understand what you could, a unique way in which you could present that particular brand, or unique marketing ideas that they could do to boost their presence all over. We were focusing on France, so particularly in France, how could they
correct.
boost their presence? And it's not a straightforward project because this is a real company, and they
Mm,
are going to actually want to implement some of the things you're saying. They're taking time
correct.
out of
Yeah,
the day to partner with a sec, and for that they really want good output. So you do a
correct.
lot of research and you speak to a lot of people.
Mm,
And again, for that, there's again a very different diverse set of people who had to work with. I'm
amazing. Yeah,
not going to exaggerate too much. There are a lot of Indians, there are a lot of
yeah,
Chinese, there are a lot of French people, so it's mostly them.
yeah,
Then you also work with people from all over the world who come on exchange. For example, for that project, I had a few people from Italy, few people from Germany come on exchange, and then you're working with again a different set of people. And it's
correct.
not only about their, like, where they're from, but it's also about their background. Like even if you're in a group with only French people and Indian people, everyone has their own background. So
Mm,
it's always a diverse group with diverse sets
mm.
of ideas, and it's always interesting to work with such people on projects.
Amazing. I think that's great to hear. And because again, I mean, it's the varied perspectives that make it better for someone who's kind of experiencing this. Perfect. So, Ron, now from an academic point of view to let's get beyond the academic point of view, right? And let's talk about how a student has to kind of go through on a daily basis at the ESSEC campus in France. So, how does a normal day to day look like for an ESSEC student, Rohan? And maybe if you can also talk a bit more about the clubs, societies that ESSEC has to offer, especially for an MIM program. And I think you can also share a bit of your experience because I believe you continued a journey with 180 Degrees Consulting Group at ESSEC as well, right? So again, can you just help us figure that out as well?
Yeah, definitely. So a day-to-day life, again, like everybody has their own priorities. It depends on what you want to do. Like, for example,
Mm,
I was not even like for the entire first year, I was there at ESSEC for the first 3 months. And then
yeah,
I just didn't go to ESSEC for the rest of the year. So it really depends on you.
Correct.
Um, so there's no particular day-to-day life, but I'll talk about my experience with 180 DC. I was only there for the first year because after that, with the apprenticeship, it became just too much to handle, and I didn't feel that I was going to could be able to contribute
Mm.
as much. So they thought I'd hand it over to someone else who had the time, who had the patience and the opportunity. Um, for me, the reason I wanted to join 180 DC ESSEC was to continue my journey because again, the clubs and societies are good, but I don't think that you do it to add it to your resume or something like that.
Yeah.
You already have a lot of things going on. You're looking for internships or you're doing your coursework, you're managing your own personal life here because you're maybe living by yourself. And you don't really have a lot of time to contribute to the club. So unless it's something that
Correct.
you're genuinely passionate about, uh,
Mm.
it's difficult. And for me, the kind of impact that I had on society when I was at 180
Mm.
DC and ITK was just amazing to see because I could see my work transform into something that created an impact, a positive
Yeah.
impact on a few people. And for me,
Correct.
that was just amazing to see. Like,
Mm.
because sometimes when you work for big multinational corporations, you get to see your work get published, but you don't
Mm.
know the kind of impact it had at the end user at
Correct.
times. Whereas
Correct.
what I could feel, that too when you're working with NGOs, nonprofit organizations,
Mm.
seeing me create a positive impact was amazing. So it is something
Mm.
that I'll always, even now, if you give me the opportunity, I'll go back and spend some time. It's just that I can't commit that I'll do it every day, every week,
Yeah.
because you're a very small group of people in the associations. You're not a
Correct.
massive group, and you're really expected to work a lot because
Mm.
real world companies are expecting that output from you.
Correct.
And for me personally, during the first year, I was not, but in consulting in specific, I was in the operations team. So I was handling the day-to-day logistics. I was also working with the consulting team to just make sure the projects are going on smoothly. I was working with the marketing team to ensure that all the content we publish about the projects, about our team, etc., is going smoothly.
Mm.
But yes, I would definitely recommend if you want to um, explore consulting or you want
Mm.
to create a positive impact, you join something like 180 DC because you
Mm.
get to work on extremely interesting consulting projects because it's always something innovative. When you're looking at, especially when you're looking at startups that want
Mm.
to enter the space of nonprofit, they always want to come up with something creative, something innovative, which you've never
Correct.
seen or
Yeah.
heard of before. So you get to
Correct.
work on doing market research or building a
Mm.
business plan or things like that for them.
Mm.
And that is extremely amazing. So if you have the opportunity to join 180 DC, I definitely recommend it, at least for some time, so that
Mm.
again, you're working actually, and people in the 180 DC team are people who have consulting experience, people who have marketing experience, people
Mm.
who've had experience with 180 DC before. So you're working with really knowledgeable people as well, and
Correct.
people who
Yeah.
are really smart, intuitive, and also share that same passion
Mm.
towards creating a positive impact in the world. So that
Mm.
is definitely a huge plus that you'll get. There are various other clubs as well. Like
Mm.
I would honestly recommend doing the clubs based on only on your interests. Don't force
Correct.
yourself to join a club just for joining a club.
Yeah.
There are clubs on finance, economics. If you want to do music, theater, arts,
Mm.
anything, there's a club. If you want to do sports as well, you have a club, any club for the
Mm.
different sports. So again, it's something that if you have the time for it and you feel that you can contribute towards them positively, I'd recommend it. But don't do it for the sake of being a part of an association
Correct.
because it is a good way to meet new people, to meet people with similar interests. I'm not going to lie, but then you can do it in other ways as well.
Correct.
And if you're
Yeah.
joining a club, I'd say you have to give your 100% towards it because the people there, they're extremely passionate about what they do. You can't
Correct.
join and then slack off. So I'd say that it is a good way to interact, meet new people, uh, pursue your hobbies, passions, learn,
Mm.
etc. Then it's not a mandate. Of
Correct.
course, as I mentioned, you have a lot of other things on your plate as always. So
Mm.
if you don't have the time for it, it's not particularly a bad thing. But then I 100% recommend doing it, at least during your first year when you don't have
Yeah.
internships or things like
Yeah.
that.
Amazing. And now, Rohan, moving to the life that you have in France as well, right? Because obviously you're moving to a new country. The way that you adjust is also equally important, apart from the academic and the extracurriculars that you do. So, for an international student who's coming to ESSEC, what is the honest truth about how much French you actually need to survive there in the city? Do you need to know that a lot, or does English work out like other European countries?
Honestly, I mean, I wouldn't say other European countries because a lot of countries want the language they speak, at least in the day-to-day, in work, etc. But for France particularly, when I had already started learning French before I came here, so I was at an okay level to converse. But I'm going to be very honest, over the last 3 years, I've not upgraded to the next level. I've been at the same level. And it is my fault partly, but it's also the environment I'm in, wherein at ESSEC you don't really use French. All your courses are in English, everyone speaks English. I work in a company where everyone works and speaks in English as well. So I wasn't really motivated, I'd say, enough to learn and continue learning. And it's something that I would definitely not recommend because it is an essential part of living here because you've taken the call to come to another country to integrate with the people here and integrate with the culture. So if you've taken that call, you cannot complain that they're speaking French, you know. People here prefer to speak in French than English, especially when you're talking with the locals, just going to the supermarket or going to the gym, etc. Nobody's going to speak to you in English. So I'd always recommend keep in touch with French, you keep learning, keep upgrading yourself. It is an extremely important aspect. Um, I for internships in your school, maybe you won't need French. You can get away with English, even for apprenticeships. But if you're looking for full-time jobs, which is what I'm doing right now, you kind of
Mm,
realize the level of French you need, where I can make
correct,
conversation, but they don't want that. They want someone who speaks fluent French. And
correct.
there are multiple facets to it because it's not only about the work. Sometimes the work may be in English if it's an international organization, but then the team members are all French and they'll want to have someone who's French so that they can interact with you more comfortably. You can have a coffee with them more comfortably. And the team culture
Yeah,
all becomes much smoother if you speak French. And it's something you cannot complain about because you are in France and that is the language they
yeah,
speak and that is the language
yeah,
you are comfortable with. So I feel that it is an extremely crucial part. I feel that people
correct.
know, even I knew how important it was, but then you don't really realize how important it is until you get here
Mm,
and see everyone speaking in French. And it's something that you cannot neglect at all, in my opinion.
perfect. So I think because you're also talking about your career experiences, so let's just jump into that as well because I think you're also looking for career opportunities in France. So for someone who's there at ESSEC for an international student, how early should they start prepping for internships and job opportunities, especially for a course that, as you mentioned, offers a lot of practical experiences?
Honestly, you don't have to worry about that too much. The time frame just it depends on you. Like, for example, for my internship in January, I started applying in November. For my
Mm,
apprenticeship in September, I started applying in March. It depends on how lucky you are. You may get it in your first 100 applications, you may get it in your 1000th application, you don't know. So
correct. Yeah,
you just start applying a few months earlier, but then I wouldn't worry too much about it because once you're in the environment here, it's all you'll be discussing with your friends, and you'll
yeah.
realize at the point in which you have to start applying, it'll become fairly clear to you.
Perfect. Makes sense. And that's beautiful to hear as well. And Rohan, because I also want to understand that how does a career service team at ESSEC also help you out with, getting the right kind of internships and the right kind of career opportunities for an international student?
So the career services team, you can have one-on-ones with them if you want to
Mm,
boost your resume, get tips for interviews. They also have a career day or a career week where they
okay,
have sessions on this. So you go to them to kind of update your resume, just speak to them, get ideas, etc. They conduct consulting and finance fairs where you can go and speak to companies and give your
mm,
resume and again just
correct.
network.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you do get support from them in terms of boosting your resume, boosting your CV, boosting the kind of improving
Yeah.
your the way you prepare for interviews. You won't get direct help with them from them. Like they won't like link you up with a company and say that you can have an interview with them. It's all up to
Correct.
you and your network, but then they
Hmm.
do give the background support.
Interesting. And a quick question, I think if you can answer it in brief, it would be amazing, Rohan. How did you get this apprenticeship at Sangoba? How did that work out for you?
How do I get it? You just apply to 1,000 roles and then you get
Yeah,
one. But to be honest, like luckily ESSEC was one of the few colleges that allows English speakers to do apprenticeships, which
correct.
is a massive plus for us because our tuition fees gets covered and then we get a monthly salary as
Amazing.
well. So you're basically
Amazing. Yeah.
settled for the next 2 years. Um, how did I get it? Yeah, I mean, it was a very rigorous process. I started applying from maybe Feb or March, and I landed it in maybe June, July with maybe I don't even know how many
Hmm.
applications. And yeah, it's not easy. It's getting harder year by year as the tuition fees
Correct.
increases.
Correct.
But there's still apprenticeship opportunities available in all, at least in large
Hmm.
multinational corporations, because they do get benefited by the government for providing apprenticeships. So if
Perfect.
that's something you're looking for, just keep applying and you'll probably get something.
Perfect. And yeah, again, I think, Rohan, thank you so much for sharing that kind of information about the academics and the career services and your career in itself, right? How it has shaped out to be an amazing one in France and how you figured your way out. And moving on to the final few questions that I have for you, Rohan. And these are very personal and reflective in nature because, obviously you're going on a journey that also kind of makes you go through different things personally as an individual as well. So, Rohan, if someone is considering ESSEC business program or ESSEC business school for the future opportunities, what kind of advice would you give to them before they're going to make the leap? And how has that journey changed who you are, or how has that journey built you into a better person?
Um, it it really depends on you. There's no straightforward advice I can give.
Mm,
Um, the only thing I'd say is, be open to learning. Never come in thinking that you know that this is the path I'm going to follow, this is the course I'm going to take, I already know everything. Like you're going to experience so many different perspectives, so many different ideas as you take the courses. You may change your field completely in the middle.
mm,
You don't know what will happen.
mm.
And don't do the masters abroad just for the sake of doing a masters abroad, and don't choose a school just based on the rankings.
Correct.
Understand what your goals are after the masters. Understand what ESSEC can provide you during these 2 or 3 years,
Mm,
and see, okay, these are the courses, this is the chair I want to do, and this will help me achieve my goal that I want to do after my masters. And then decide the college. There's no right college for you. There's no right college for
correct.
everyone. The college
Correct.
depends on what it offers, and does that sit with your personal goals. So
Correct.
you'll be experiencing a lot of new things, a lot of different opinions. People will be doing their own stuff.
Yeah.
When you come here, you can't say that, okay, this is something that I was
Mm,
set that I'm only going to do this and I'm going to continue with that. You may change your mind, etc. And everyone here is going through their own different journey. So come with an open mind, but also kind of have a plan of what you want to do in the future. Not a
correct.
straightforward plan that this is the field, this is the role I want to take up, but then at least have a generic idea so that you can make best use of the resources that ESSEC provides.
Perfect. Amazing. And I think that kind of wraps up the core question that I had to ask you, Rohan. And to kind of quickly end today's session, I think we'll have a fun segment. And I think you know what it is. It's a quick rapid fire that I want to kind of have with you because, again, it's the best that kind of comes out and in these kind of rapid fires itself. So, again, whatever comes to your mind, the first thing that comes to your mind, Rohan, just go ahead and, shoot it out. Right. So, I'll
Sure.
just start with the rapid fire. Perfect. So, one word to describe ESSEC Business School.
I would say one word would be culture
Perfect.
because it's just so diverse. Basically, what I've explained so
Hmm.
far.
Perfect. One word to describe your MIM journey.
I would say steep learning curve.
Perfect. Favorite thing to do in France.
Oh, explore Paris.
Perfect. Favorite spot on campus.
The open area in the center just to chill and talk to friends.
Perfect. Best event you've ever attended at ESSEC?
Uh, Maybe our final presentation for the chair, which was in front of different stakeholders from all across the circular economy industry.
Perfect. Best part about studying abroad?
I would say the best part is you get to meet amazing people.
Hmm. Perfect. And the biggest culture shock moving to France?
Biggest culture shock, uh, honestly, it depends on you what a culture shock is.
Hmm.
For me, it was how everybody prefers to speak in French, even if they know English, even if they're confident in English.
Perfect. And with that, Rohan, we wrap up the rapid fire. And again, I can't thank you enough for taking your time for today's session, because this has genuinely been one of those sessions which has been very real. Because whatever you've mentioned the last 1 hour has given me, and I think the people who also attended these sessions, with so much insight and knowledge that at least it gives a lot of clarity for people who are planning to kind of take this step ahead as well. So thank you so much. I think what you've given today is invaluable, and I think we can't thank you enough for having you here. And obviously we would want the best for you going ahead in your career as well. And I hope you do the best. I hope you make the most out of your France journey, and I think it should go beyond the experience that you're having, and I hope you do great things in life. So once again, Rohan,
Yeah.
thank you so much for taking out your time for today's session. And for all the people who've been listening and tuned in for this session, thank you again for being a part of the session. It's been amazing to have you as an audience. And if you felt that this was something useful and something that you would want to listen to more often, please subscribe to Score Leap Test Prep, and we would be glad to kind of give you more sessions that kind of give you the right kind of insights on different colleges and study abroad as a whole. And thank you. Until then, take care.
Thank you.